Thanks so much for everyone being here. This is a real pleasure and an honor to have all of you here. And I also have with me one of my most admired mentors, advisors, friends. You know, I met John about a couple of years back, and I was trying to talk to him about joining Pindrop, joining the board of Pindrop, as well as investing in Pindrop. And through the course of learning about him, I learned about how humble a leader he was. And it made me even more curious to have him on our board. And John was gracious enough to join our board and invest in Pindrop. With that, let me pass it over to John.
BJ, it's a pleasure. Let me encourage you to, why don't you pull up, get several of you on the chairs, pull up the other chairs behind, etc. Grab a glass of wine. You'll enjoy my comments even better after the second glass of wine. And what I want to do is be able to make this the best session you do at CES. So I've learned what happens when you miss market transitions, and I've had the good fortune of being with IBM, a great company, mainframes, then Wang, great company, mini computers, then PC and the internet with Cisco, now with digitization. And I have a lot of weaknesses in life, which we can talk about later after the second glass of wine, but my strengths are getting market transitions right, and to be able to connect the dots to understand the outcome and focused on the outcome, not the products. So when you think about the future of any market transition, usually people get too excited about it too early, i.e. blockchain or cyber currency, etc., and that it ends up taking much longer to develop and never perhaps gets close to what people thought could be done. I think there are two elements that are going to be the exception to that. The one is artificial intelligence, and the other, candidly, is the importance of security, and voice is the primary interface. And so while there'll be starts and stops in terms of what each company experiences or we as consumer experiences, these are trends that are going to move with tremendous speed. And it's one that I think if Pindrop executes right, and I clearly believe that they will, they can lead in the industry. There is truly a tug of war between tech for good and tech for bad. There's truly a tug of war about which nations are going to lead in innovation. There is a lack of a digitization strategy in this country. We're the only major country in the world does not have a digitization or a startup agenda. The only major country in the world. And we take it for granted we're the number one innovation nation, and Bloomberg Index has us at number 11 and going the wrong way. And so it is all those things that together started to cause me to think about writing a book. In terms of the book, I was getting the same questions every time, not just startups, but every government leader. How do you really set your country up for the future? And how do you use technology to enable those transitions, but also how do you deal with the challenges, including job destruction that's going to occur? And then as I travel around the world with the large companies, they would say, John, we understand that a lot of the innovations now are going to come out of startups. We have to deal with startups in a way we've never done before. Each of you have a different set of competitors than you ever did before. And the way that you interface to customers is going to be so much different. And out of all the major companies, it doesn't matter which ones you are, your CEO believes they provide superior customer services. Yet if you ask the customers, less than 10% will tell you they do. And you can't compete just on price, because that means that's a bottomless barrel. You've got to compete on that customer experience, and how you use technology to make that easy to use becomes so key. So when you really think about what is the primary driver for voice as we go forward as the primary interface, the easiest one is it's easy. And that's rule 101 on technology. Make it simple so that all of us can use it easy without it being so complex. You have to be almost a technologist to use it. But it goes back to, it has the advantage of being able to address the security issue, the authentication issue, the ease of use type of issue, and in a way that others have not been able to do it. So that's why I'm so optimistic about the future of voice.
I work for a company that is heavy into voice communication in the enterprise. It's my belief that we're only starting to scratch the surface of how voice is actually utilized in the enterprise today. We use it for critical communication, but not for the purposes of productivity, the way it can be unlocked with AI technology, analytical technology, and over-the-top use cases. So I think certain infrastructure technologies are going to help us unlock those capabilities, and what we'll start to see is a frictionless interactivity based on voice in the enterprise. I think we're still in the early days of that, and of the adoption of where that comes in. I see how voice has changed consumer interaction, being what pulls through some of those changes in how we think about interacting with voice as a society. And shortly, we will start to see some of those new use cases and the infrastructure technologies that enable us to unlock the potential of voice for productivity.
So if you think about market transitions, right, people often say, all right, John, what do you look for in the market transitions? First, from the business technology side, I think you get what I'm doing, but on the technology side, it's very simple. It's all around digitization, Internet of Things. It's all around AI and automation everywhere. It's a combining of the physical and virtual worlds at a tremendous speed. It's computing moving to the edge. It's the interface to the systems. Now remember, I was the person that said voice would be free and it's irrelevant. Well, voice is the primary interface for the future, and that is a huge change, and that's why you always want to listen and learn in terms of the direction.
I'm a bit conservative, when it comes to jumping on new technology. When it comes to, voice, I'm not an early adopter at all. Like I don't, other than Siri, I don't use Alexa, because I'm really nervous about that. But I think as more companies emerge that show that there's a lot of innovation in the security of it, then maybe it'll sort of, give me a little bit of relief, Again, maybe that's why I'm excited about Pindrop, to be honest, because, it's interesting to see that some people are already thinking ahead of that, and thinking, okay, well, you need authentication and you need security and all that. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess there's hope.
In the next 5 to 7 years, there will probably be a massive transition, as what John said. And I think what you're going to start seeing is voice being a primary interface for your daily life. Talking to your television and saying turn on instead of pressing a button on a remote control. Being able to open your door with a command, either through a Google Home or an Amazon Alexa, rather than having to run down and turn a deadbolt. So I think you're going to start seeing that market dislocation of people having to press buttons or pick up remote controls, and you're going to start seeing them be able to say things to smart devices that will do very interesting things. And the use cases have yet to be determined.
When I look at a startup that really has a high probability of making it, the first thing I look at is, did they get this market transition right with the new technologies and understand the implications of it? So if you look at very simply why Pindrop, it's VJ. It is a market transition occurring with artificial intelligence, with tremendous speed, with security being the overlapping area, with voice being the primary interface in terms of direction, and it's going to change every business model, but especially the customer experience model. The second thing is, when I went out to talk to these customers, they not only love the company, they understood how this was going to change their own business plans and models, either for image of innovation or enabling the other segments to move at a faster pace than they would have been able to do otherwise. If you look also in terms of their ability to be one and two in their industry, I think they do. And I can use the word dominate now. I couldn't do that either at IBM from very early training many years ago or at Cisco, but I can use it with startups. I look for startups that can dominate their industry.
The element, I guess, in the market that's really exciting for me is just how pervasive the market is, right? Like all the mega tech companies have voice assistants, and a lot of other companies are trying to do this, but none of them have this voice recognition and authentication that Pindrop provides. And this is, if we're going to start using this in more critical applications, like today it's doing kind of benign things around the smart home, but as you start going into automotive or going into commercial buildings or into critical application spaces using voice, you're going to need this higher level of security. So this is going to let voice go to more places where right now, because it's too low a security, it's a security risk, the Pindrop technology will allow it to go into more and more fields.
I think Pindrop has a chance to be the leader in this segment of the industry. You've got a world-class CEO in VJ. You've got a team that I think can emerge and bring together, being driven by your customers in a way that others do not. And when I've talked to your customers, they love you. So why did I invest in Pindrop? Why am I on the board of Pindrop? The VCs that I'm closest to told me I should be here. The customers told me, but it also is your CEO.